listen, everybody wants our dollars, right? They want it. We're a massive consumer in the world. So I think us getting to more of a level playing field, and the idea that we bring more manufacturing back here, we create more products here, buying American products. I shared this story, I think, in one of the live streams, that I do this Shark Tank with these sixth graders at my kids' school.
Yeah.
And a few years ago, when I started, every product that they created for Shark Tank, they made it in China or Vietnam. And I playfully said, we make stuff here too, right? And one of the grandparents in the audience started cheering and getting all excited. And he was a Vietnam vet. And he was like, as you said that, I was thinking that, because we've been brainwashed to think that as business owners, we have to make something overseas because we need that margin. And this new idea that we can make it here is going to take time. And that's why I think he's been so aggressive with the percentages, President Trump, because we really need to set a new mindset in the United States. And this idea that we need to make our own products, and it needs to be an aggressive push, because we went the other way in the 70s, right? We started sending everything overseas, and we thought it was great, and it was great for the 1%, but it wasn't great for the middle class at all. I mean, we've really the middle class has really suffered since we started to to make so many products overseas.
Absolutely. So I think you're right. It's going to take time. With the right policies, we can start to reshore a lot of that manufacturing that we lost decades ago. And one of the interesting things is to try to think about what are going to be some of the industries that stand to gain the most. Just a few examples. Obviously, automotive, if we can get more production here, those are big paying, high paying jobs.
Right.
It will take a while because there's so much infrastructure involved. There's so much material sourcing that's involved. And we have right now a fairly integrated automotive industry with Canada and Mexico. For example, parts are made in Canada, then they're shipped here and they're reassembled a little bit further. And then that part is sent back to Canada and same thing happens in Mexico. There's a lot of car production that happens in both those places. But those are some of the probably first places to be impacted the worst is the auto manufacturing plants in those two countries. But now we're going to see Ford and GM and these major plants bring everything back here, and that'll produce a ton of jobs, a ton of economic growth that's going to help us in the long run. That's just one example of industries that stand to benefit. Now, in 2018, Colin, when Trump introduced the first steel tariffs, at that time, what we saw over the next 2 years was American steel production increased by 8%. So it had the desired effect. It just took a little bit of time. And I think that's probably what we're going to start to see in some of these other areas. We just have to figure out how quickly we get there and with how much kind of economic pain or uncertainty in the meantime. And that's another big topic here, is as good as this is for the long-term vision of the country, making America great again, reshoring all these jobs, what does it do in the shorter to medium term in terms of potentially pushing us toward a recession or a period of prolonged inflation?
Yeah.
We already talked about how it'll affect consumers. Higher prices mean that we're going to see less money going around. But if it goes beyond the consumer and starts going into businesses, seeing declining growth, that'll all sort of lead to a lower GDP number. And a declining GDP would be recessionary. And then that puts us into are we going to experience a multi-year recession as we go through this multi-year expansion? So that's just one of the things that I think is yet to be determined too, but it'll be a very important consideration for our clients and investors, right? Is what's happening to the US economy over the next few years. Maybe it grows like crazy in 5, but we've got to get through this next period, especially if you're coming up or already in retirement. Very, very important.
Yeah. While we're talking about that, I know, Ryan, you got a new video that was kind of interesting. I don't know if we want to pop that up here.
Fair trade practices that we have, 50% from the European Union on American dairy. You have a 700% tariff from Japan on American rice. You have a 100% tariff from India on American agricultural products. You have nearly a 300% tariff from Canada on American butter and American cheese.
Yep.
This makes it virtually impossible for American products to be imported into these markets, and it has put a lot of Americans out of business and out of work over the past several decades. So it's time for reciprocity, and it's to take historic change to do what's right for the American people.
That's bang on, and that I'm glad that I'm sort of verified by her saying that Canada has a hundreds of % tariff already on dairy. We're really just meeting them where they already have tariffs on us. So you can see how so many markets are impossible for us to basically tap into with these preventative style tariffs, and that's all by design, right? So that'll be
and I think part of this is reframing our thinking in that, because these tariffs have been so onerous, that there's probably a lot of people in the US that have just avoided trying to sell their products to these places. And that's, that's why I think this is really interesting, what's going to happen tomorrow. Because will we be creating, if some of these countries start to pull back the tariffs that they're charging on our products, does it create a whole new revenue stream for business owners here in the US?
Yeah.
And I think I wish, honestly, they had gone into this earlier, because I think if they'd started having these conversations over the last 2 months, people would have been more open to the idea, but they've just started to
kind of pull back the curtain on what other countries are doing. So I know it's been perceived as, us kind of shaking a big stick. We want to impose all these tariffs.
Sure.
I think the messaging, you're right, probably could have been a little bit more strategic from the get-go, from the jump, saying, look, we're not actually imposing anything that doesn't already exist on us. We want to tear down trade barriers. So unless they want to remove their tariffs, we're going to meet them where they already have us. So
what do you think about this question? How is this allowed? Why did we allow this
to happen to us? Yeah, to happen to us. Basically, Trump's hinted at this previously, saying, we've made a bunch of bad trade deals, more or less glossing over the fact that he actually had, one term to maybe, take the axe to a lot of these tariffs and bad trade policies. So I just think over time, like you said, Colin, globalism and the benefits of it were sort of short-sighted, but they were very real. Cheaper products, fantastic. Who's going to complain about that?
Sure, right.
Better business margins. No company is going to necessarily balk at that either. So, we've got cheaper electronics, cheaper goods, cheaper clothes, cheaper everything. And we've experienced deflation in a lot of these kind of common day goods because of globalism. But the long-term negative effect has been that we've kind of gutted industrial America. Yeah. And it's not a sustainable trajectory to be on, to just be this massive consumer nation that's not actually a major producer nation. Now, we do produce a lot of stuff. We've got a fantastic, diversified and strong economy, but it's not where it could or should be. And that's sort of what I'd say, is it just kind of that slow roll of people aren't really complaining over the years of having cheaper and cheaper products, but then all of a sudden you realize there are these massive areas throughout the country that used to have a lot better jobs and a lot better paying jobs. And we want to bring that back.
I would argue too that a lot of people always say that Trump aligns themselves with business, but I would say that a lot of businesses are not happy with this. Because they've been able to profit so much at an American expense, right? Like regular American expense. And so I would argue over the last 20, 30 years, while we've had these since the 80s, almost 40, 50 years that we've been doing it this way, we've really benefited big business. And in a way, this tariff policy, and why a lot of politicians didn't want to do it, is because they were getting paid by huge corporations. And so that's why no one's ever wanted to do this. Whereas Trump said, listen, in terms of actual business and middle class, the bigger benefit of this is in the middle class. The middle class will benefit the most because, like you said, you bring back jobs for car manufacturers. Those are high paying jobs. You start being able to send cheese and milk, and we can be competitive in Canada. We can start manufacturing more of those things here. So it actually creates higher paying jobs, which is what we actually need. I would argue with all AI and everything happening, like jobs are getting pulled away. We need higher paying jobs. We need these kind of jobs. So it's kind of interesting, like what people have said about Trump, and you could make some arguments. Obviously, he has connections to big business, but also I would say this tariff attempt, what he's doing is actually, it's going to piss a lot of big business off. It's actually not in the benefit of big business. They'd love to just keep sending everything overseas at a cheaper price, and just see huge gains.
But
Obviously,
I think
gold is okay. Go. How long will we feel the benefits of the tariff? Is the next question.
Hard to say, right? So I think it depends on how quickly the business landscape adjusts. It also depends on whether or not we have to experience any kind of growing pain, so to speak, over the course of that adjustment. So tariffs come in, maybe the counterparty of that tariff reduces theirs on us and they go away and we have better, freer trade right away. Maybe we end up in this kind of escalated, intense trade war that lasts several years where it's tit for tat and it really hurts consumers. It's probably too early to say. I really do think time will tell, but these are developing fast. I mean, look at all that's happened in the first 70 days of the Trump administration. I think we're going to see things move pretty quickly here for better or for worse. But again, it puts us on the kind of the right track long term. So I think we're just gonna have to kind of roll with it, see with it, and
my gut is we got 2 years minimum. We got 2 years of pain. I think I do think it's going to take some time, because if you're talking about moving manufacturing back, it's going to take time for these companies to make those moves. But I think they're going to start announcing this year that they're going to building factories in different places and they're going to start making products here. It's all going to happen.
Yeah.
But for us to see it, it's going to take a while. They said, what is 140, 150 billion in tariff revenue. So it's not a huge amount.
Yeah.
But it's more of a psychological step.